Like most of you, from where I come from, there's an entire ritual to storytelling. There are a couple of things you have to say before the story starts, and in response to the storyteller's prompt. Sometimes it's Jasigana, Aganwe, to which one has to respond, Ganwa Jasigana. Oftentimes, it's in Swahili. It's hadithi hadithi, hadithi njo, uongo njo utamu kolea, which is loosely translated to be, let the story come, let the embellishments come, and let the sweetness be great. I'm thrilled that you could all make it to this session today to share this experience with us. My name is Melisa Allela, and I am an interactive media designer. What this essentially means is that I tinker a lot with the technology, exploring and exploiting the storytelling potential. More importantly, seeing how such tools can be used to retell African works of orature. Remember, this is a fully immersive experience, so you can look around you. At the moment, this is like an early, beta version of this project. The idea is then to make the storyteller you're seeing to be fully interactive. That means we're going to integrate things like AI so that she can understand what you're saying and be able to respond to you. So pretty much trying to mimic what an actual storyteller would do in a live telling session.
What is the biggest challenge that you have encountered on taking on this idea of storytelling through virtual reality? Thanks.
Thank you. So that's a very good question. And the biggest challenge has been, let me give you two answers to that. One is more like as a production, like somebody creating this, issues we have on that side. The other is more getting this content out there. So as you can see right now, we have just a couple of headsets to go around. Normally, an ideal situation would have like lots of headsets for people to have. Each person has their own headset or have this at home with you. But this kind of headset tend to be a bit costly and expensive, quite prohibitive. So we're trying to make experiences that anybody can watch and make fully interactive experiences, not just 360 videos. But then the equipment that supports that kind of experience is a bit limiting. So you're restricted just to location-based events like this, where people come and then see the experience, or watch the experience on location. On the other side, other issues we experience more creating this is, there is a very small collection of digital assets that one can use to make this kind of content. So when you're a small team, else in the world, people will you go online and if you're making, say, content that has like Asian aesthetic or Western aesthetic, there's lots of databases that have like motion capture files for animation. Also 3D asset files, if you're doing like environments, you can get lots and lots of assets that quickly make or cut down your production time. But when you're making content that has a very obvious African aesthetic, 3D content like that, it's very difficult to get this kind of resources. So you're confined to making all this on your own. You have to do all your animation, do all your motion capture, because you won't get movement. Gestures are very cultural specific sometimes, gestures for instance, or even just how a performer, how a storyteller does the performance. It can be very specific to a certain region. And you can't get that from an online motion capture database. You have to make that yourself. You can't get a specific dance from an online motion capture database. You have to sometimes get a dancer from this region and do that yourself. And linked to that issue, we're trying to contribute to the community. We have a library on our website where we're uploading some of the assets we've made just to make this accessible or available to other people who might want to make similar resources. It's just a small bit we're doing to help grow this kind of content creation.
Have you had an experience of doing this presentation to, let me call them rural or village audiences? Number two is, given what you just explained about the creative process of having a particular experience or a particular story, I'm just wondering, how long does it take to have a quote-unquote a reasonable repertoire as a presenter or as a storyteller? I'm thinking of maybe 7 stories, which you could actively be sharing, because it sounds like to be able to come up with one piece is quite a project. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the creative process, how does somebody within a short time would be few years, to have a repertoire of, let's say, 7 that you can be able to move around with and engage with audiences wherever.
All right. Regarding your first question, if we've shown this in a rural area, we haven't, but then we've shown this work in Kisumu. And Kisumu doesn't really count as a rural area. So we had a small group of, very young, like individuals who are into the tech, a bit techies, so to speak. And we showcased the project to them just to get feedback. We had a small focus group discussion. And it was interesting to note that many of them, the age group was like between 20 and 25. But many of them had never had this story to begin with, which sort of helped us, give us a sense of this is what we're doing actually makes sense, because this is a story they should be familiar with. It's Luanda Magere. It's supposed to be famous. Everybody knows this story, but they had no idea what the story was. So that sort of gave us a sense of, it strengthened our resolve to continue doing this, because it means that the many such stories that are just being forgotten, and they'll never be retold again if you don't document them. And then about production, so yeah, sure. So I work with Brandon, so he's my partner in the project, and he'll also add on to this response. This particular iteration was done in a very short time. So we have like a grand project, and that could not be shown here. We had to because it's not finished. That's taking time, and also other resources like money and things like that. But to show this here, we actually had less than a month to put this together, using other resources we had, like 3D characters, but that was very little. A lot of it was done entirely from scratch just for this showcase.
And to add on to that a little bit, it's not so much the number of stories that matter, it's the complexity of the storyteller. So you could spend 2 years making a storyteller, and then if you did it well, and if it was an intelligent, complex storyteller, you could tell 100 stories with the same storyteller. But if you focus on individual stories, then that method, it's like making many different movies rather than making something like an interactive experience. But to make 7 stories, it wouldn't take like 7 months, 1 month for each story. It would take you 6 months for the first story, and then every story after the first one would be much faster.
Yeah. So I could. So this work, for instance, is stemming off from work I was doing as part of my PhD research. And something I'm exploring there was what are called embodied conversational agents, essentially 3D characters that are intelligent and can understand you. So that's like a complex storyteller who has AI embedded and can hear you, can see you, so they can hear what you're saying and respond appropriately to what you're saying, both by what they say and how they say it, the gestures and the verbal behavior. That's a complex storyteller. So if you're going to use that kind of complex storyteller to tell other stories, you don't need to start making her from scratch. You just need to feed her with new stories, new information, which is not new environment or a new 3D character. She will already have a voice. She'll be smart enough to hear you and understand you. And that's like the main goal of what we're trying to work towards, to make this kind of artificial intelligent character or agent who can actually respond in this kind of manner.
Just to quickly add on to that point, in a storyteller, a simple storyteller could sit and tell you a story. A complex one would be able to play a musical instrument at the same time, or to be able to dance and tell you a story, to be able to do something even with you. So this storyteller in this early version, she cannot shake your hand, or she can look at you, she can talk to you, but she doesn't have like an entire conversation with you because it's not set up for that yet. It could be, it just takes time and effort and a bit of money to actually achieve that. But it's not, the complexity of the story is not what matters. You could tell a very long, very complicated story, or you could tell a very simple one, but the story itself, while they're important, from a technical execution point, you could tell any story. It could be Red Riding Hood or Little Bo Peep with the same African storyteller in the end, as long as it's set up right.
Right. So thank you all so much for being here. We, of course, dedicate this experience to our parents, my mothers in the audience, who are our first storytellers. Thank you.